Please come in.
Mr. Stalin?
Yes, that's me. Please come in. Tucker, right?
That's right, Tucker Morris.
Okay, fantastic. Why don't you sit down there?
Thanks, sir.
So why don't you start by telling me about yourself?
I'd love to. Well, I'm a sophomore at UVU studying business and working toward a minor and major in Chinese in order to pursue a career in international law.
Mm-hmm.
For the past 3 years, I've been working as a paralegal notary public and office manager at a local firm. I'm a fast learner and I'm a good communicator. I want to work in position to promote lawfulness internationally and open channels for communication using the language of law to make the global stage a more just and fair place.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. What do you feel you have to offer above the average employee when it comes to accomplishing your daily responsibilities and goals? Can you share a specific example?
Love to. I believe that I have a real knack for time management as well as for making my own resources when there's none available for me. For example, at one point I created a series of spreadsheets to track hearings that we had all over the state of Utah in various judicial districts for well over a few hundred hearings to track. And in addition to that, set up a system to keep tabs on accounts that we hadn't scheduled hearings for, but we might want to in the future, and to follow them every step of the way until we actually got to the hearing date. And that just resulted in a much more efficient way of doing things than had been done before.
Okay, excellent. Can you describe for me a corporate strategy or resource that you maximized to have a positive impact on your territory's business?
Sure. At one point, the attorney I worked for approached me, my coworker, and told us that for a change strategy, we're going to be focusing more on one particular new client that we had to just maximize their returns right out of the gate. And I feel I really maximized that through, again, using these resources, some of which I made myself, some of which were provided to me. And in the end, we were able to accomplish all of our goals, and we were able to reach out to a lot of people in a really short time frame, just based on our commitment to completing this.
Wow. What have been the top 3 resources provided to you to get your job done, and can you name any resources that you believe provided no value?
Sure. I mean, for me, as I was saying before, Microsoft Excel was really one of the big resources I used. I've gotten pretty deft at it, but in addition to that, fact-finding resources such as Experience, TLO, and Equifax's The Work Number Employment Verification System have proved tremendously useful, and delving into them to find just the little tips and tricks and ways to maximize the system has proved really fruitful for me. On the other hand, I found that some other fact-finding systems, say Facebook or really the Department of Workforce Services portal, have not been quite as useful, but like I said, we found kind of ways around those and ways to get that information otherwise.
Okay, very good. Can you recall a time when you were less than pleased with your performance, and what did you do about it?
Yeah. At one point, I was working on a handful of accounts that were, frankly, just difficult to work on, and it was kind of a turbulent time in my life personally, and that had an effect on the work. But when I saw the pattern that was forming, I was able to take the steps necessary to getting out of that. I worked on myself a little bit, improved myself, and that brought an improvement to the work. But I was also able to look at these accounts more critically past the difficulty that they proved to me and think about the best way to go forward with these accounts, to spend more time on them or use different resources than the ones I had been using primarily on different sorts of accounts.
Understood. Think of an example when one of your customers wasn't pleased with something you or your team did. What was the situation and how did you recover?
Okay. There's one particular client of ours who had slightly unrealistic expectations of the collections process, and in particular, the timeline or time frame for it. Collections can take a little while, especially if it comes to litigation, which our firm had a specialty And so this client was just not very happy, thought that he'd already have more of a return on the work that he put in to get these accounts to us.
Mm-hmm.
But over a series of phone calls and other correspondence with this client of ours, we were able to discuss expectations and get on the same page. And he was able to have a more realistic expectation of what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I made more of an effort to spend more time on these because I knew that they would take more time to do. And, just making sure to give this client updates and keep him with us every step of the way, because it was important to him to get to get a return on this investment of his.
Right. So tell me about a time that you showed initiative. What prompted you to get started, and what were the results?
Okay. When I first took over as an office manager of a collections agency, I took over for just one person who was the office manager. They had run the office their way, and when I came in the office, it was in a little bit of a state of disarray.
Mm-hmm.
The physical space was messy, but also the procedures were out of date, and the accounts weren't being tended to as frequently as they ought to have been.
Mm-hmm.
So to start off this new position of mine on the right foot, I made a point of cleaning up the office, making the space my own, but also of updating the procedures that were in place, making them more efficient, more streamlined, and the written out procedures themselves more understandable and intelligible, frankly. And just making sure that these accounts that I had been given stayed in working order, and that people that had plans with us were kept in contact with, and that wasn't broken. And that ended up being a really good thing to happen, and the office saw a market improvement.
Very good. Describe a time when you elevated the level of value you brought to a customer over time. How did you accomplish this?
Okay. Well, one of the clients that the attorney I worked for was working with was a person who was in the process of filing bankruptcy. And you could tell it was tough on them, that it was really kind of taking an emotional toll on them to kind of drag themselves into the office whenever they come in. And I noticed this, and I made an effort to reach out to this client, just in small ways, making sure they had some water to drink while they were meeting with our attorney,
Mm-hmm.
or even just providing them with basic information for plans they had, the weather, the time of day, or anything like that, just to make sure that when they came into our office, they were not only working on their own legal proceedings, but they were also in a place where they felt safe and comfortable, and where they felt like they were in control of what was happening to them. And that really made a big difference to them. By the time all was said and done, they carried themselves a lot more confidently in the office, and they felt like they could handle the bankruptcy, and that they could stay on top of everything that they would have to do.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Let's see. What does business ownership mean to you, and give an example of when you were most successful at it in your prior roles?
Okay. Well, I think beyond the base definition of business ownership, of owning a business and
Right.
being the person at the top who's responsible for the success and failure of the company, I believe that every employee can take business ownership upon themselves when they can internalize that same idea, that the success or failure of the office relative to their work is on their shoulders. And one great experience I had with business ownership was at a time of a little bit of turbulence in our office. The attorney I worked for was recently involved in a plane crash.
Oh, wow.
And so he wasn't in the office very frequently, and the other paralegal I was working with recently became a father, so he wasn't in the office a whole lot either. And so the only person in the office for sometimes days on end was just me. And at that time I realized that it was up to me to step up and really take the success or failure of the office upon myself. So through fielding every call, responding to every email, either corresponding with other attorneys and clients myself, or delegating that out to my coworkers or my boss, and just working the whole office, really impressed upon me the significance of business ownership in just a single employee's role.
Yeah, very good. Can you give an example of when you fell short as a business owner, and why did you fall short, and what did you learn from that experience?
Okay. There was a period of time where, as the only employee at this same collections agency I mentioned previously, it had been a little bit from when I started, and I was starting to slump a little bit, I could feel, and I just felt overwhelmed. There were a lot of accounts to get to, and I just felt like I didn't have enough hours in the day to get to all of them. And I felt like I had kind of let down my end of the business ownership stick. But I was able to pull out of that by dividing my time a little bit better and setting specific times to do different pieces of work, especially pieces of work that I hadn't been able to get to consistently. And through that, I was able to get caught back up and run the office smoothly.
Well, yeah, that's excellent. Can you describe your level of competitiveness and tell me about a specific situation where your competitiveness helped you achieve better results than your peers?
Sure. Well, frankly, I'm not very competitive by nature. I prefer to work with those around me to find a solution rather than trying to just be the best by myself. I'd rather take everybody with me. And one example of that I was involved in came when I received a call from an account debtor who called us just to tell us that they were filing bankruptcy, that they couldn't handle the burden of the debt we were collecting, and it was just too hard for them. They wanted to file bankruptcy. And so I spoke with this person, and after a while we were able to come up with a plan that worked for them, that wasn't too onerous on them, to get them to the point where they wouldn't have to file bankruptcy. But this plan was something that I couldn't authorize by myself. So I got in contact with our client and spoke with them about it, explained the situation. We worked together, we tweaked a few numbers, all the while keeping the account debtor in the loop so he was aware of what was going on. And at the end of the day, we came to a nice agreement, and the account debtor was happy because he got a plan that worked on his terms. The creditor was, or our client was happy because the plan worked on their terms as well, and I was happy to be able to facilitate that.
Wonderful. Tell me about a time when you didn't agree with a corporate strategy or initiative. What was the strategy? Why didn't you agree with it? What did you do?
Okay. Well, this strategy was to find new clients for us to collect. And the way that the attorney I worked for had us going about this was to essentially do cold calls through a fairly old list of medical professionals. And just based on my experience, before this list came up and through calling through this list, I realized I disagreed with it because it just wasn't a great way to find new clients. So what I was able to do was, in addition to going through this list and doing what our attorney thought was best, I also looked elsewhere, kind of on the more peripheries of the medical profession, and through contacting those offices, I was able to find a couple brand new clients to bring into the firm who not only needed collection work and legal help, but also hadn't even considered that they might need one before.
Wow. That's excellent. What was the most useful criticism you ever received from an immediate supervisor? How did you embrace this feedback and achieve a positive outcome?
Okay. I think it would have come in my first real job out of high school while I was working in an office, creating presentations for my boss to present to sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds of other employees in the organization, and just doing odd jobs. I really wasn't around the office space that much, but on one particular day, my boss called me and my coworkers in the same position into his office and gave us a criticism that he expected the office to be cleaner when we were in it. Even though that wasn't our position, even though there was already cleaning staff, he told us that we ought to keep the office space cleaner. And that really impressed on me the importance of taking pride in your workplace and making the office space not just a space where you can do your best work, but making conducive so that everybody in the organization, from the top to the bottom, can do the same.
Right. Wow. Very good. So that's kind of all the questions that I have for you, but do you have any questions for us or for me?
I did. I was looking at your website, and I saw that you offer free lunch twice a week for employees. Now, do the employees get to choose which days lunch is provided, or is it a structured Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday type thing?
Yes, I understand. So the way we have it work is it is structured because we have very solid ties to a couple families in the area, and these families, they like to provide us pizza and spaghetti, but they only provide them on certain days, and that's just the deal we have worked out with them. It's a good relationship we have with these families, but there is a slight risk of violence or retaliation if we break our deal with them. So we tend to keep it on those days, and if we bring you on, we'll let you know what those days are and give you more information on that.
Okay, that's delightful. Thank you.
Okay, it's great. Any other questions?
I think that's all for now.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for coming in, and we'll make sure to keep in touch with you, Tucker.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Mr. Stalin.
Yes,
it's great to talk to you.
Yes, you as well.